My name is Lisa Shea, and today we're going to talk about making your own cards. These can be any sorts of cards, so you can make your own playing cards, your own Pokemon types of cards, your own baseball types of cards, your own tarot cards, or whatever else kind of card you want to make. And this card can represent you, it can represent an emotion you're feeling, it can represent a favorite pet, anything at all from your imagination. So let's talk first a bit about cards. Most popular kinds of cards came from the root of playing cards. So these are Beatles playing cards. And playing cards have different suits, so the heart suit and the clover suit, clubs, diamonds, and then you have different cards in there, the Queen, the Q for Queen, the J for Jack. So you can make just one card representing one particular thing that you like. So maybe you like the number 3 and you like the idea of hearts, so you can make yourself a 3 of hearts card and have whatever symbol in there that you want. So playing cards came from Asia around 800, and then they moved to Europe in the Middle Ages, and then they have spread everywhere. There's all sorts of games that you can play with playing cards if you want to make a whole deck. From playing cards came tarot cards. So where the playing cards have hearts and diamonds and those sorts of things, tarot cards have different kinds of suits. So they have swords and cups and rods and pentacles. So with tarot cards, you have the same thing where you have a 3 of swords or a 4 of swords or a 5 of swords or so on. And they have their own kind of symbolism on here. So one of the interesting things with tarot cards is that when you look at the card, different people can have different reactions to the symbolism. So this one here is a cloister deck tarot card. And when you see the 3 of swords, you might think that this person has a broken heart because they have a heart that has been stabbed through by swords a couple times. But the traditional interpretation of this is that the heart is stronger now because these swords have built a network in it, a network of steel, which is keeping the heart together and keeping it sturdy. So while this person was hurt, because of that hurt, they become stronger and more powerful and more able to face the world. And the 10 of Cups is a card of happiness and contentment. But each person who looks at a card is going to draw their own interpretation from it, because different people might have different interpretations of what a rainbow means or what cups mean or so on. So part of the fun of tarot cards, if you decide that you want to make one, is that there's a lot of interpretation involved with it. People don't tend to interpret playing cards, although some do. But people do tend to interpret tarot cards. And these started as playing cards in essence, but now they've grown to have these additional meanings to them. So then we have the Pokemon types of cards. With Pokemon cards, they have meanings, but the meanings are printed right on the card, so that way everyone knows exactly what the meaning of a card is. So this is Goldeen, who I love, Horsia, who I love. I tend to like sea creatures, as you can guess. So they have meaning, and the meaning is written right on here. Smokescreen, horn attack, and so on. Pokemon. And Pokemon cards first came in Japan in 1996, and then they moved over to the US, and now they are everywhere. And there's baseball cards and other kinds of sports cards, collectible cards, and they would make one for each player, and then the card would have the statistics on it. So the same sort of idea as this, just that these were with real people and these were with imaginary creatures, although who knows, a horse could exist somewhere out there in the world. So there are different kinds of cards out there. You can make one that's sort of like one of these existing kinds of cards, or you can make a card that's all of your own. You can make cards that are rectangular, circular, square, diamonds, whatever kind of shape you want. So what we're going to do for our card making adventure today is get any kind of paper you want. I happen to have Bristol paper here because this works well with pencil and crayon and watercolor and all sorts of different things. But you can use regular paper that you want. So when we're getting ready to make our card, you want to have some paper available. You want to have some scissors so you can cut it into the shape you want. And have someone that's going to help you with the scissor part if you need it. You'll need something to decorate your card, so you can just use a pencil if a pencil is what you want. If you have a pencil, I recommend having an eraser because mistakes happen and that's okay. We change our minds. I am going to do some with watercolors, so if you want to do a watercolor card, that's always fun. If you're doing watercolors, then you will want to have a brush and some water to be able to do that. And you can use crayons if you want. I've got some crayons under here somewhere. There we go. So you can do crayons for cards. You can do charcoal. You can do acrylic paints, whatever you want. So why don't you get your supplies together and then we will get started. Or you can just watch me if you want to and then get some ideas for yourself to work on a later time. Okay, so we'll start from easy to more complicated. So we'll start with the easiest one first. We'll make a card with just a pencil and paper. You don't need anything else except, I suppose, a pair of scissors to cut the paper into a shape if you want it in a different shape than it already is. So we got our pencil, and this paper that I'm using is good for crayon, pencil, charcoal, watercolor, whatever kind of stuff you want to do. If you don't have this kind of paper, that's okay. You can just use whatever kind of paper you have around. You can use watercolor paper, printer paper, backs of envelopes, anything will be fine. Junk mail, any junk mail that has white backs on it, that would be okay. Alright, so we got some of this paper, and we're going to choose a card to cut around, but you don't have to. You can cut it in any shape you want to. I'm just cutting this to show the general size. Alright, so now we have a card that's just about the same size as this. We'll put this out of the way. It's a little off. That's okay. It can be whatever shape and size you want. If you need help cutting it straight, you can get some help from a friend. So once you've got a pencil and your piece of paper, you want to think about what you want to put on it. If this is your first card, then you could just do a free-form experiment and see what comes to mind. Do you want to do something cute? You want to just put a circle in? You don't have to draw what I'm drawing. Draw whatever comes to your mind. You could draw a creature. Give it some eyes. Give it a smile. Draw whatever you want. It can be a representation of you. It could be a pet. It could be a friend. It could be a family member. We'll give it a body. Some hands. Maybe some legs. Oh, you could put a background in. Put a background over there. So this is completely up to you, and this is just a test. This is just a starting point to see what kind of things spring to mind when you think about what you might want to put on a card. Tree in the background. There we go. So that's just a random idea I came up with. I did not have that pre-planned at all. Just saw what kind of a mood I was in for doing this card. We'll get some shading to the body. There we go. Alright, and then if you want to put a name on it, what is this creature called? Gorg. Alright, so now I've got a card with the shape and with how I am feeling today. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. So your card does not need to be detailed in any way, or it can be as detailed as you want it to be. It can be whatever kind of shape you want. It can be a person shape, or it can be an abstract design. So here, I'll use the back of this to show you another idea with pencil. Something else you can do is just draw a random line through here. That looks good. Another random line. And some more random lines like that. And once you've got some shapes on there, you can go to a section of the shapes and fill that in with whatever comes to mind. So lines, you can fill it in with little curly things. So this can be a relaxing way. I'm going to make a spiral in here. relaxing way to doodle away and make designs that appeal to you. I was taught this way back. Do I want to admit when I was done? Many decades ago. This was taught to us in school as a way to relieve stress and to make new and interesting patterns. So I won't do them all now, but you get the idea. You can make lines in some. You can make dots. Whatever you want. And in this case, this could be the back of my card, if I wanted, for my Gorg card. Or I can make a new card that was sort of like a meditative card. So I could just make this be the standalone card, and then I could make a whole series of them and have each of them represent different moods. Because even the way that you draw things, the way that your pencil moves and everything has to do with the emotions you're feeling in your state of mind at the moment. So it can be very relaxing just to free your mind and make something abstract and that doesn't have any explicit meaning to it. And you can do all of those things with a pencil. And if you like straight lines, you can always, of course, use a ruler and do straight lines with a ruler and make designs with that. So those are just some ideas for the pencil kinds of cards. Let me know if you have any questions or any additional thoughts on pencils and cards. Okay, so now we're going to talk about making a card with crayons, because many people have crayons lying around the house, so they're an easy art supply to get your hands on. Again, you can use any kind of paper you want. I happen to be using Bristol paper because it works with crayon, pencil, charcoal, watercolor, pretty much anything. But you can use whatever paper you have lying around the house, so there is no stress. Any sort of paper is fine. So this is my Bristol paper that I'm working with. We'll cut it a little smaller this time just to make different cards of different shapes. But you can cut yours in whatever size you want. So we're just cutting the shape of the card. You don't need to cut around a card, I'm just doing it for fun. You can cut it any shape or size that draws your attention. Alright, crayons. So previously we worked with pencil, which does just black and white generally, although there are colored pencils out there, so it's not necessarily just black and white. But now we're going to expand things a little, and we're going to go with colors. So there's all sorts of colors available. You don't have to use all the colors. You can just use one color, or you can use a group of colors that appeal to you. I happen to be a blue kind of person for some reason. I like to do a lot of things in blues. So we'll pull out all the blues and purples and work with those. You can use whatever colors you want. Alright, so think about what you would like to put on this card. Are you going to do a picture of you, a favorite pet, kind of emotion you're feeling, an abstract scene? Well, let's do, well, we did an abstract screen with Gorg's back, so let's try something else. What shall we do? Let's do a shape. We got a triangle here, so let's do a triangle. So we'll start with a little triangle in the beginning. Triangle is a traditional shape of stability because a triangle shape, like with stools, the three legs keep it steady. If you've got three legs in a stool, that keeps it nice and steady. It doesn't let it rock. If you have a tripod for a camera, the tripod base is nice and steady. So a triangle is used in many different connotations for being something that's nice and stable and firm. So I am expanding on my triangle idea. You can draw whatever you want to draw. And this is your own personal card, so don't worry about it being right or wrong or anything else, because there is no right or wrong with your personal card. Now you could always say, oh, I wish my triangle was a little straighter. I'm going to practice on making straighter lines, or maybe I should have used green instead of blue, but that's all part of this practice process. You try something and you see what you like about it, and then you can make another one later and then see what you like about that. And part of the fun of these is that you can save the cards over time and see how your thoughts evolved on it. Maybe the first cards you did were all yellow, and then later on you start making cards that are all green. Or maybe your first cards all involve a certain pet, and then other cards involve something else. So it is fun to look back at the evolution of your cards and see how they go. Yep, so we're going with the whole shades of blue theory here. And I'm just working outward from my center triangle. Work on whatever you are doing. Breathe deeply. Everything is going to be all right. The body's emotional system is developed so that when you take long, deep breaths, the body knows that it's all right to relax, that it's all right to let the healthy healing hormones come through the system and to stop producing the stress hormones. So especially if you're feeling stressed for some reason, working on something like this and taking long, deep breaths while you work on it can be very good for your health and body. There we go. So just think everything is going to be all right. Everything will work out somehow. And we're making, in my case, triangles, a sign of stability. In your case, you're making whatever it is you decided you want to make. Alright, now, normally I would go on making triangles outward, but I don't want to spend the entire video making this one triangle thing. So we're going to take a shortcut now, and we're going to give it a yellow background. That way we get done with this section. Nice and quick. But you take your time. If you're having fun with the crayon stage, you can always pause the video and finish up the crayon, and then move on to the next stage whenever you are ready. I'm just showing you all sorts of different example ideas so that you have some ideas of what you want to work with. Alright, so there's an idea for a crayon design for your card. And so again, this shows that you can make designs that feature humanoid types of creatures if you want to go that direction. Or you can do cards that represent abstract shapes and concepts if you'd rather do that. So that this could be my stability card for when I'm thinking about stability and quiet. This could be my fun card when I'm thinking about fun and having a nice day. Alright, so ask with any questions about the crayon card and enjoy the crayon process. Okay, now I'm going to do a card using watercolors. So we did a monochrome pencil card first, and then we did a crayon card, which could have been monochrome if we just chose to use one crayon, but I happen to use multiple colors of crayons, so we got a monochrome thing. And now we're going to use watercolors, which involves a bit more kinds of supplies. If you're going to do watercolors, you need some watercolors. They don't need to have all these colors that I have. You can just do ones that are red, orange, yellow, green in a traditional set. You need some water to activate the watercolors, and you need a brush to be able to paint the watercolors. In addition, I'm going to use a pencil and an eraser to draw the design first so I can see what I'm doing, and then the scissors is to cut the card that you're working on. So let us get started. I'll move the water out of the way, move the paints a little out of the way. I've got a card that I've cut into card size. You can cut any shape you want. You can cut a circle card, square card, you name it. Cards come in all shapes and sizes. Alright, pencil. What am I going to draw? Let's draw an octopus. So draw a head. Gonna draw a couple legs. Leg 1. Leg 2. I'm going to try to do this fairly quick so that we don't have too much time taken up with the actual painting. But you can draw whatever design you want, whatever appeals to you. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6. Octopuses generally have 8 legs. We have an 8-legged octopus with some eyes. Octopuses should have eyes. Alright, we've got a design. You could draw whatever kind of design you want that appeals to whatever kind of a mood you're in. So with watercolors, take your brush, you get a little wet in your bin of water. And here, if I pull this forward a little, you can see what I'm doing. What color should our octopus be? We'll make him green and blue because those are the colors that I like. So we got a little blue. So one way of painting watercolors is to get the brush wet, like I just did. Get a little paint on your brush with the wet brush, and then just paint directly into a section of your paper. So we'll do that here. And you see I'm doing this one very light because these are the back legs, and I want the back legs to look light so that they look like they're back into the water of the ocean. And the front legs will be much darker so that they look like they're in the front. I'm just adding a little more water to my brush. You can paint whatever you want to with your watercolors. One of the fun things about watercolors is that you can paint in layers. So that you can put that color down and then you can put another color down on top of it, and those colors will mix and mingle. Alright, so we got some of the back legs. We got 4 legs in the back. Yeah, let's do this leg in the back too. Alright, so I'll do some of these legs. Which 2? Let's do these 2. A little darker, as if they're in the middle ground. So a little closer to the viewer. That is you. Alright, and while this is still wet, I'm going to add in a little bit of green. And because the area is still wet, that green paint will sort of spread out a little and blend in with the blue, which gives a pretty effect. Alright, so I got a little green in there. Alright, and a little green on this other leg. Alright, so now we got some greens and some blues. So that's the darker leg. I'll make this one a darker leg. So things that are light tend to look like they're deep in the background. Things that get darker tend to seem like they're more closer to you. Alright, so what I'm going to do with the rest of the octopus, which I want to be in the front, is make it really dark. And also what I'm going to do is, instead of painting directly with the brush and color, I'm going to clean my brush. So my brush now is nice and clean and just has water on it. So with the brush with just water, no paint, I'm going to paint in his head area. So there's only water there. There is no color. Might look like it's a little tiny bit green because there's a little tiny bit of paint left on there. But mostly that is just water. And I'm just filling in water in this paste. Now what's going to happen, now that this is nice and wet and watery, is that if I take some of this blue and just touch in those areas with blue, the blue is going to spread throughout the whole wet area in sort of a cloud. And this creates a very pretty effect. So all I'm doing is tapping into the water, and it spreads just like as if you dropped food dye into a glass of water. So that gives it a nice gentle effect. And it also means that you don't really have control over what's going to happen because it'll spread the way that it wants to spread. So we'll add some more blue in there. Make it darker. Darker. Oh, I'm going over the eyeballs. That's okay. I'll paint the eyeballs in afterwards. Alright, and then we'll just clean off my brush so it's nice and clean again. and then add in some green. Put green in to the same areas. So now the green is mixing in with the blue, which is okay. It's what I'm after here. Green. There we go. The other front leg. Green. There we go. Green. Alright, so I think you get the gist there. So we have a watercolor design. You could take as long as you want on your watercolor design, of course. You could let this layer dry and then come back and add some other aspects to it. You could paint in a background if you think a background would be lovely. Now I have eyeballs here that I want to make black, but because there's so much water right there right now, like here, I'll show you when I put the blue in. See how it spreads out? If I were to add the black eyeballs right now, they would just spread out and take over his entire face, and it would be a face eyeball, which is not quite what I'm going for. So I'm going to need to let this dry, and then after this dries, I will be able to come back and add his eyeballs in. Alright, so I think you see the gist of having a watercolor card. You can make whatever design you want, and you can make a whole series of cards. That's part of the fun of this, is you make a card and they say, oh, well maybe I should make another card that looks like this. Or if you made a card each day, you could see how you feel each day, and some of them might be full of quiet emotion and some of them might be full of active emotion. And that would be fun to see as well. Alright, so see he's got some dark parts, some medium parts, and some light parts that gives him some sort of a depth. He sort of looks like a space alien creature, and that's okay too. You can do whatever shape you want. And once this dries, I'll put eyeballs in him. Alright, so ask any questions about making a watercolor card, and you could have it be whatever you want it to be. If I wanted to make this into some sort of a creature, I could give it a name, and then I could put all sorts of statistics on the back about what type of attack he does and what kind of defenses he has and all of that sort of thing. Alright, well have fun with your watercolor card. Hello, so now we've done a pencil card with monochrome pencil drawing. We've done a crayon card that could be monochrome if you chose, or it could be multicolored. We've done a basic watercolor card that involves just watercolor and pencil. So what we're going to try now is a Crayon Resist Watercolor card. So this involves the watercolors and the brush and the water that we had from the watercolor example, as well as the pencil and the eraser to be able to draw the shape that we're going to be drawing. But in addition, we're going to use a white crayon as part of this. So the white crayon will give us a cool resist effect. So once you've got those kinds of supplies, then we will sit down and work through our adventure. So I'll put the water to the side. Move the watercolors themselves up a little. That looks good. And we'll put that stuff there. And we'll do it this way. So once again, with these cards, you can draw anything that you want to, whatever design appeals to you. So what I'm going to draw is a sea turtle, because I happen to really like these sea turtle designs. I find them relaxing and soothing. And to me, it's about safety and security, because the turtle can pull inside its shell whenever it's feeling stressed about life, and then stay in there until it's decided that it's ready to come back out again and swim around its pond or lake. So we have a square of paper, or whatever shape you want to cut. You can do circles or triangles, any sort of shape of card that you're interested in. I'm using this Bristol paper because it works well with crayons or pencils or everything else. You can use general use paper like this. You can use watercolor paper. If you use regular printer paper, just know the paper is going to get a little wiggly when the water gets on it, and that's fine too. It's fine to have wiggly paper. So think about what kind of design you want to draw that represents your emotions or feelings of the time, or if you want to do something with symbols in it, that's okay. Something that represents a pet or a family member, whatever you're in the mood for trying. And you could try something, and if you decide that it's not quite what you want, then you could try something else. It's okay, there is no stress involved. So we're going to do turtle. I'm going to do this fairly quickly so we don't have a 40-minute long video on turtles. This is about different card ideas rather than a how to draw a turtle lesson, but I do in fact have a video about how to draw turtles if you're interested in learning that. So put the turtle head down, a little neck, make the sequence of center shapes, but you can draw whatever you want to. You don't have to draw a turtle. I just happen to be drawing a turtle because I like them. Find them to be soothing and relaxing. So as you're doing these shapes, the more that you take in long, deep breaths, the more that your body knows to relax. Everything is going to be all right. There we go. Put a little flipper out there. A little flipper out there. Turtles have little legs in the back. And then the edges of the shell. It's a tail. Edges of the shell over here. You can draw whatever you want. We'll do some shell ridges. There we go. Alright, so the fun of Crayon Resist, when you get to the point of being done with the penciled part of your drawing and ready to use the crayon, is that the watercolor will not get to the paper where the crayon is blocking it. So it's like a blocking tool that we're going to put in. So if I trace this flipper, for example, with white crayon, the watercolor can now not get to the paper through the crayon. The crayon's performing a block with its wax. So I'm going to trace all of the major lines in here. You don't have to trace the smaller lines if you don't want to. You can trace whatever you want to have blocked. And part of this is you can do this once or twice and see how it works, and then you can think of other ideas of where it might come in handy. So you might say, oh, this works really well with an octopus, but it doesn't work so well with a lobster, or whatever kinds of shapes you're drawing. So the more that you play with it, the more that you get ideas about what else you could try doing with it. So all I'm doing right now is tracing the lines. And again, I'm doing this sort of quickly so that we are not spending 8 hours on the intricacies of drawing a turtle, but this is to give you an idea of what kinds of things you can do. There we go. Alright, and then I'm also going to make little wiggly lines in his flippers. So these are just random, so I didn't need to draw them out. And even in his head, because that'll help create some designs in those areas. Alright, so all we have here is a shape I drew in pencil. I traced that over with my crayon, and now I'm going to add some watercolor it for color. So we'll just put the crayon down there. So the style that I like to do is fairly soft and mushy. So I don't really have the colors necessarily being anywhere in particular. They're all blues and greens, but they all just sort of mush together. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to paint the whole area with water, just plain water, and then I'll sit there and add color into the water, and the color will spread and blossom. So let's see how that works. So I'm going to take my brush and put it over in the water and just get water, no paint at all. So let's do the whole body so you can see how this works. I'm just painting the entire shell with water. No paint, just water. And these lines that you see were traced with crayon, white crayon. So now, when I get some blue paint, so my brush is wet and I'm just sticking it into the blue, and I just touch it to different parts. You can see how it sort of blossoms out from where I touch it because it's spreading in the water. And it goes wherever it wants to go. But it won't go on the lines that I drew because the crayon is blocking it. The crayon is acting like a shield for those sections. Alright, so now I'm going to rinse the brush out and get some green and add some green in here. And the green and the blue will mix. A little more green. And those will mix together. So now I get mergings of green and blue. And in general, I want the shell to be the darkest part of the turtle, so it draws the attention. I want the flippers and things to be a lighter color. Alright, so see how the different blues and greens are mixing together? I could always go back and rinse my brush out again and get a little more blue and add blue to make some of these areas darker that got a little overly green. There we go. So add some blue to things. Alright, so we got blues and greens. Now I'm going to add little tiny bits into these side scales. Very small little areas, so they won't fit a lot of paint, but just enough to give it a little dash of color. Alright. Little neck area. Alright, rinsing my brush. Now let's look at the head. So I'm putting just water. My water in the brush is clear. And now I'm going to take a little blue up. And you can see that the blue is on there. And I'll put some blue over here. Put some blue over there. Maybe some green. So this is fainter, but I don't want them to be too dark because I don't want them to compete with the interest of the shell itself. And I'll put some paint into the legs. There we go. Alright, apparently I didn't go heavy enough on the crayon than the head because I'm not getting the line effect too much in the head area. But you can see here on the flippers how there's the little lines that I drew with the crayon where that's preventing the watercolor from getting down to the paper there. So the same thing here, there's those little lines that I drew with the crayon. And you can sort of see them in the head area. Alright, so now we've got a turtle that's done with crayon resist. And you can see how the different segments of the shell have stayed separate from each other because of where the white crayon was drawn in. And now if you wanted to give it a name, you could write a name across the top. You could give it some statistics if you were wanting to do a Pokemon kind of card. If you were wanting to do an interpretive kind of card, then you could put some more symbols around there about things that you think about when you like to feel safe, like maybe a little house or whatever other kinds of symbols are important to you. So however you want to do it, or if you just want the turtle to represent you as your spirit animal, then you could just leave it as a turtle and have it be a happy flying turtle or swimming turtle, whatever it seems to appeal to you. Alright, just rinsing off my brush. Alright, so ask if you have any questions about painting with watercolor and crayon resist for doing your personal cards.